Thank you all for joining us for today's Aloha webinar. So without taking any more time, I'm going to turn this over to Deacon Tom Perry and Pastor Mark Shultz of Trinity Lutheran Church in Mission, Kansas.
Good morning and welcome everyone from a very, very cold Kansas City. When I woke up this morning, it said it was 15 degrees and the wind chill was 7, but we still have hope it may get up to freezing today. So I hope wherever you are is warmer. They asked us to do a webinar on older adult ministry because here at Trinity, we've had one going on for about 6 years or so. I am Tom Perry. I'm a lay deacon serving at Trinity in Lenexa, Shawnee. And we've been doing this for a number of years. With me today is our senior pastor, Reverend Dr. Mark Shultz, who is also a vice president of the Kansas district. Pastor Shultz was very instrumental on forming this ministry here at Trinity, and it's an intentional and enhanced ministry. And we're going to try to share with you what we've done here, and hopefully you can pick up some cues on maybe what you could do in your own congregations. So like Carol said, if you have some questions, there will be 3 different times during the presentation where we've set aside time to pause for any questions that you might have, and we'll take care of them then. And so without any further ado, I'll give you Pastor Mark.
Thank you, Tom. So I thought a good place to begin would be with that word enhanced. So of course, the title of the webinar, How to Start and Enhance an Intentional Older Adult Ministry in Your Congregation. Why enhanced older adult ministry? So one statistic just to think about for a moment, and that is that 10,000 people per day turn 65 in the United States. Just stop and think about that for a moment. 10,000 people each day turn 65 in our country. We probably don't know the statistic until we see it before us now, but we're well aware that our population is aging. There are a lot of older adults in our society and in our congregations. And so an important question to ask ourselves is, what is our attitude regarding older adults? So as we observe this phenomenon, what is our attitude regarding that? Do we view older adults as a problem, as in, oh no, we have so many seniors, there are so many older adults in our congregation? Or do we view them as an asset? Oh, great, we have so many seniors with so many gifts for ministry, so many opportunities because of the way God has blessed us with these older adults to engage them in ministry. So attitudinally, it's really an important thing to think about and to talk about. What is our attitude regarding older adults? I'd like to turn to scripture for just a moment. Very familiar words. For those of us that grew up Lutheran, we memorized these words at some point. From Ephesians chapter 2, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. Very familiar words, as I said, and let me highlight just a few things from these very familiar words of St. Paul. First and foremost, God has saved us by his grace. The wonderful good news that we are saved not on the basis of what we do or don't do, but because of what Jesus Christ has done for us. Praise be to God. But notice that immediately after Paul emphasizes that point of being saved by grace, he goes on to say that he has equipped us to do good works. So good works are a response to what God has done for us in saving us by his grace. And please note that nowhere there is there mention of retirement or of stopping doing good works. There's no time when, well, now my time of doing the good works God has prepared for me is over. There's no mention of that. Simply, we're saved by grace, And now we have the opportunity to do the good works God has prepared for us beforehand. So it's helpful to think of ministry both for older adults and with older adults. And first of all, we're going to address the ministry for older adults. So several ideas here in terms of the ministry that you perhaps already have in your congregation for older adults. I'm guessing that there is some sort of visitation ministry that's in place, but perhaps you could consider training others, including seniors, to assist the pastor with visits to older adults who are homebound or hospitalized. By doing so, you both give an opportunity for other seniors to minister to other seniors, but also you increase the number of visits, the number of contacts that take place in a given amount of time. Similarly, to train others, including seniors, to provide telecare, or if it's an option with things like Zoom and so forth, to have those types of contacts available. Again, using seniors, but also ministering for older adults in this way and providing additional connectivity.
Another way of having ministry for seniors is to provide devotional and Bible study opportunities and resources. I think most churches probably do a really good job on that. We here have a number of different opportunities for our seniors to go to Bible classes. They're on different topics and at different times during the week. We have one larger one that meets on Wednesday mornings, and we get quite a group, probably somewhere around 50 people every week come to listen to these Bible classes. One thing that's important, I think, for a Bible class to be successful is to have a good leader. It doesn't have to be clergy, but if you have some retired clergy around your church, you know, they are a good resource. But it can be other teachers or other people who are confident in the scriptures and are able to pass that on to others. So the spiritual aspect is very important, and that might be a good way for you to start.
Another aspect of enhancing ministry for older adults is to provide worship resources for them. So one thing I would encourage you to do, if you haven't done it for a while, is to assess your facility. What is the ease of access for seniors or for those who perhaps have some difficulty with stairs or other issues? What is the ease of access to your facility? Just walk around and see. Another is to think about providing hearing assistance. There are a lot of systems that are available that can be utilized that make it helpful for people who have difficulty hearing to participate in the worship life of your congregation. Along with that, things like large print hymnals, if you have pew Bibles, some large print Bibles. If you use screens, are they easily readable for someone who perhaps has less than 20/20 vision? And of course, now there's been an explosion in online worship options and opportunities. So perhaps you're already using some of these, but things like pre-recording your service and then posting it for people to access it, live streaming your worship, and a number of other options as well. But all of these ways that the ministry of worship can be enhanced for your older adults, both in the congregation and also in your community.
Also, what is good to try to do is to have workshops and offer speakers on different subjects. Here at Trinity, we call that a senior series talks, senior speaker series. And what that is we get experts from different fields. We've had a host of them with anything from safety in the home, wills and trusts, Alzheimer's and dementia, Social Security, county resources, and the need for movement, physical things. And this doesn't have to be an expensive thing where you pay people to come in. Quite often, you have those experts in your church congregation. For the wills and trusts, we went to a lawyer here in town, and he gave a nice seminar on what is entailed in making out a will and a trust and advance directives and all of that thing. And that was well received. We had quite a few people take advantage of that. Safety in the home was a fun one that we had. We had a detective from our Mission, Kansas here come and talk to us about safety in the home. And that got to be a fun issue, believe it or not. And I don't think I want to go into all the particulars there. But then we had one on Alzheimer's and dementia, where we asked the local Alzheimer's Society to come in. And then we had a member of our congregation who wrote a book on dementia. And we had another member of our congregation who was a doctor and talked about Alzheimer's. These are all well received, and people get an awful lot out of them. Also, the community resources from the county. We have a committee on aging from the county, and they have so many resources that they provide that people don't know of. They came in and they told us what they had, and people have been taking advantage of those. We've also had the need for movement, physical type thing, where we had a doctor come in and say simple ways of just walking and that sort of thing. Those are the types of things that are informative and can help be a ministry for your congregation.
I'm going to pause the share for a moment because I fat fingered on the slides and I need to get that corrected, but we can go ahead and entertain questions on enhancing ministry for older adults while I'm fixing that.
Okay, and we do have one question from Lynn, who has asked, is there any additional information you can provide on assistive hearing devices?
I really don't know the answer to that. Our church does a really nice job with that. I don't know if we still use it so much, but you can get the individual headphones and things. Those haven't been used too much, but the amplification and the microphones at our church are pretty well monitored and done. Other than that, boy, I don't have a really good answer for that.
I don't either. So there are a lot of systems out there, and I would suggest maybe you can find a church in your area that's got something that they use that they're happy with, but I don't have any additional immediate resource on that. Are there any other questions, or is that it for now for questions?
We do have another. Do your members prefer to hear from peers?
You know, I think, I don't know if prefer. Sometimes an expert is somebody who lives in the next community, you know, but what we found that when we bring people in from our congregation, they're friends with those people quite often, and they listen to them and believe what they say. And so if you can get someone from your congregation who is versed well in any topic that you decide, I think that's an advantage. Not only is it an advantage, you don't need to pay somebody to come in, but people know each other and they have a connection there. So I think I always try to go first to the congregation for the experts that I have. And if I need someone like the police officer who came in, then we'll go to that. Or if we go to the county, we would have people from the county aging come in and talk to us. So you can go either way. I think what I prefer to do is to go to the congregation first.
Good, thank you. we've had a couple of people respond about the assistive hearing devices. Nikki says her church is looking into a hearing loop, which is a system, she says, that people connect with in public spaces where those with hearing aids can connect with a particular frequency to be tied into the speaker system.
Oh,
And Dan also offers, you can look into induction loop technology for a large room like a sanctuary. And some of those work directly with hearing aids. I know from personal experience. So those are just two additional things to look into. And then Anita asks, they have a preschool at their congregation. Have you been able to integrate the elders and the children?
yes, we have. We probably get into that a little bit later, but I might as well talk a bit about now. We have a preschool, and we have different older people from our congregation who go and read to them, read books. I've done that a few times. Dr. Seuss Day, you dress up like Dr. Seuss. In my case, it was a heavy Dr. Seuss, but you'd dress up and you'd read one of the books and interact with them that way. Also, I know we have 3 pastors, and they all interact with the preschool regularly. And yeah, that's a wonderful way, and it's fun too. In older adult ministry, you need to keep it fun and have that fellowship aspect to it. And this is one way of doing that.
Any other questions for now?
Nope, that's it for now.
Okay, well, I think we're back on track slide-wise. We'll find out in a moment.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about having the ministry be with older adults. When we started our ministry here a number of years ago, we decided that we would have 3 different focuses that we wanted to cue in on. One was the spiritual aspect, which churches generally do a pretty good job of. That includes your Bible classes, your worship services, in being inclusive in the worship services. We have readers that read and all sorts of way that they help with the spiritual aspect. Another focus is our health and well-being. The health and well-being, or the health and wellness, we have people come in on the senior series talks. And that's where we talk about health. Like I mentioned before, we do the Alzheimer's and dementia. We've had people come in and doctors come in and talk about the importance of movement and keep moving, walking and that sort of thing, and other things as well. With older adults on the health, older adults can be helpful when pastors can't always be everywhere, and so sometimes they'll call upon older adults and others to be of assistance with them in the cases like that as well. And then we also go into life issues. That's the third focus, is life issues. Everything, when people retire, they still have an outside life other than the church, and things affect them, retirement, Social Security, things like that. Well, that's where these senior series talks come and focus on specifically on things like that. And then also kind of with that life issue, we have times to be volunteer organization where we collect things like food for the pantry that we have, clothing for a different organization here in town, and things like that. So, yeah.
As we continue now, focused on ministry with older adults, back to the attitudinal issue again. So to me, it's really important to emphasize the wonderful resource older adults are, both in spoken and written communication. And we put there repeat often, both for the benefit of the older adults themselves. I'm sure you've all heard, and maybe you've had the thought yourself, getting older, what is my purpose? I can't do some of the things I used to do and things of that nature. And so to keep on emphasizing as a congregation to our people, yes, you are valued. You have a purpose. You are important to us and you're important to God. And to do that verbally and also in writing. But it also has a benefit for the congregation at large for them to think about that too, that yes, again, going back to the beginning, we don't look at our seniors as a problem, but we see them as an asset to our ministry, as opportunities to use them to be a blessing to others.
A real interesting and worthwhile program that many churches take advantage of is the Stephen Ministry Program. Older adults are well suited for that. I've been a Stephen Ministry in the past, and my time with that, I look back on and in a one-on-one issue opportunity, that was one of the most fulfilling parts of my ministry, to be able to go and be with someone who needs a listening ear and help them with some of their problems, not do that for them, but to help them find answers for some of their problems. Seniors come about this almost naturally. And if you don't have a Stephen Ministry program in your church, you might consider looking into that. It's a well worthwhile program, and yeah, you may take a look at that. Okay. Another thing that we do, and has been enjoyable, is to find the gifts of different people in our congregation. We zeroed in on the older adults, and many of them have the talent for writing. And sometimes you have to boost them and urge them on, but we've been able to put together different devotionals, an Advent devotional, which took the talents of a number of our writers. And these are all older adults. Some of them were clergy, some of them weren't. But it's important to try to use these gifts. It benefits people in a number of different ways. It benefits the person who is giving the gift, the older adult who is making use and finding that purpose that Pastor Mark was talking about, and relaying a thought that they had, or a poem, some poetry that they had. And sharing that with others. It also helps the person who is receiving that and reading that. It may give them a different view of a scripture verse or whatever that they had never thought of before. And it helps the church as well, not only from the content, but the fact that they're including the older adults and the congregation in being an active part of the congregation and the active spiritual welfare of the congregation. Once again, it's working with our congregation. Another thing that we do is different projects, I guess we could call them. We do Easter baskets every year for our shut-ins or homebound. We have the whole church donate different things for Easter baskets. Candy, of course, that's a biggie. And reading material, some of those Huggy socks, and sometimes blankets, all sorts of things that our shut-ins would appreciate to get. And they look forward to this every year. Then what we do is we collect those things. Our older adults put them together in great big baskets. And then the older adults, just the week before Holy Week, go and take these to our shut-ins and talk with them and share with them what their days are like, and the shut-ins share with them. And in many cases, new friendships are made. And so that's very helpful. Also, we've done a number of times, we've done what we call hand-up bags for the homeless. where we gather things together, socks and fruit bars and a number of different things, and we put them in these quart-size plastic bags. And we stuff those, we come together and stuff those and put them out, and I don't know, we make 100 or so at a time, maybe even more. And we then let those be available to our whole congregation, so that when they go around the city and they see a homeless person, they can give this bag full of a lot of different things to that homeless person. And it's really well received. Once again, the older adults put it together. They get a feeling of being worthwhile doing that. Our congregation gets to have a purpose as well. And those people really benefit from that hand-up bag. And the biggest thing in that, I'm told, is the socks. They really love the socks. So.
This was touched on earlier with intergenerational opportunities, but extremely important in enhancing ministry with older adults. So in addition to the reading to preschoolers, which was already discussed, we have Lenten mentors. So this takes place for our confirmation ministry during the Lenten season. So on the Wednesdays of the Lenten season, each confirmation student selects a mentor, and not all of them are older adults, but many of them are. And they meet with them one-on-one, and there's a provided curriculum that they work through together. And that has been a wonderful blessing for our confirmands to hear the good news of Jesus from someone other than mom or dad, or one of their pastors or other staff people. But then oftentimes there are relationships built that last a lifetime. So it's been a wonderful blessing and continues to be. Similarly, we have something like that for Sunday school students as well, where a Sunday school student meets one-on-one briefly before Sunday school with their mentor. Again, not all of these are older adults, but many of them are. And similar to the Lenten mentors, a real wonderful intergenerational blessing there. Something we started 2 Christmases ago was family Christmas caroling. And the invitation is to the entire congregation. And we simply get some fire pits, put them out in the parking lot, set up some chairs, have some carol books, and of course, some hot chocolate with marshmallows, and then sing some Christmas carols. And we've had a wonderful age range there, from the very young to definitely older adults and all in between. And it's been a really good intergenerational experience. Also wanted to point out, don't forget the importance of the intergenerational component of worship. How wonderful it is that our younger families and the children see older adults worshiping faithfully in God's house, and the interaction that can take place there, and just the example of the importance of worship. If you think about our world today, so much of it is segmented by age, and church is one of the places where we have tremendous opportunities to engage one another intergenerationally. So I really want to highlight that as you think about this idea of ministry with older adults.
We're going to pause a little bit now to take any questions that you might have before we get started on how to get started on a older adult ministry in your congregation. So, Carol, is there any questions that we have?
More of a comment than a question. Linda says their senior group, the Owls, the older, wiser Lutherans, have had a dental hygienist from the county health department come in and speak, and that was very well received, being information that probably people had not heard before.
Well, you know, that never occurred to us. And what a wonderful idea. And there's so many different people that you can come and have in and talk about what they're doing as well. We had someone come in on hospice as well, you know, to talk about hospice house, and someone talk about when you're ready to go out of your home and leave your house and home and take the next step. You know, what is that? And so we've done that as well. But there's so many, just like that dental a person coming in and talking. You can think of so many things, and usually, it's cost effective and very nice. So,
Okay, Bill has a question, and this one's a big question. Any suggestions to persuade a church of over 4,000 to have a paid staff person to lead or strengthen their current senior ministry?
yeah, we're kind of going to go into that a little bit. The question on whether having a paid staff member or not. In our case, I was part-time, and I was a paid staff member part-time to do the work here. We don't have 4,000 people, maybe half that, maybe not quite half that, but the benefit of having a paid staff member is you have somebody that is responsible for it, and has to take the responsibility for whether or not it's working, how to change it. And they're paid to do that. So sometimes with a volunteer, even though they are so wonderful to give of their time, it seems like, well, yeah, but I got the grandkids doing stuff. Well, grandkids are important too, but there's something about having a paid person that, at least in my opinion, is maybe preferable, especially in larger congregations. Pastor, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I would just add to what you've already shared, Tom, that what I would do is see if there are some people that share the idea of, yes, we really need to do something more for our older adults, and go as a small group and meet with the leadership of the congregation and really press the point that, yeah, this is something we need to do and we need to value. And we need to value it to the point of adding that as a staff position. So I'm a senior pastor, and there are always a lot of ideas, and you can't do all of the ideas, but you certainly have to address the ones that seem to be the most important. And sometimes when it's not just an idea by a person, but there's a group of people that have that particular view and passion, that can be significant. So definitely would encourage that in a congregation that size.
Linda has offered, she's a paid part-time faith community nurse, and senior ministry comes under her responsibilities for that. So that's another way to do it, is combine it. And someone else has offered, as a paid staff member, even though I have a committee that helps me plan things, if it weren't my job, most of the things we offer would not happen. But he's asked, is there value to having talks or education on helping seniors related and talk to youth? So I'm going to allow him to talk to see if he, and go ahead, Bruce.
Well, I'm a member of a church which is prominently seniors, and we're trying to reach out to youth. But I'm wondering how many of our seniors really know how to relate, how to talk, how to communicate with youth, and have those youth understand they're being respected and listened to. I mean, our intentions are good. That's not the issue. But do we have the skills? And is there a value to teaching some skills at this? Again, I'm a grandparent. I'm great talking to my granddaughters. I don't know if I'm great talking to other people's granddaughters.
I can respond to that. So what I would encourage is, whether it's in your congregation or perhaps in a neighboring congregation, find a DCE that has responsibility for youth ministry and ask them to address that very issue. We do have DCE here in our congregation who works specifically with youth and their families, and she would be a wonderful resource for that particular topic, and she could simply give a presentation. So I'm guessing that you could find that resource somewhere in your geographic area.
Another thing is that what I think is that getting over the fear of talking to youth that you don't know is part of the problem. It's been my experience that kids just like older adults, especially the really young ones, some of the older ones can't stand me, and that's understandable, but those younger ones, I can still get my hands in there. So, but we had a situation here during COVID. COVID changed a lot of different ways on how we had to do things. And so we were looking for gifts that different people had. We had one man who is a woodworker, and just a really fine woodworker. And he got together with the help of our DCE with one of our youths who made furniture. And so together they made furniture. They were staying safe, wearing masks and all of that stuff, but they worked hand in hand. Sometimes it's not just the speaking and the talking, but the being with the kids and the youth and working with them there. And we've had several instances where things like that have happened. So getting over that fear and just doing what you do well and sharing that with someone, I think it helps the problem as well.
I might add too, because I've just come off of 3 years being a confirmation mentor, is just being interested in what the youth are doing, what that individual is doing and what they're involved in. And my particular mentee was involved in dance and also some plays at school. So I went to those plays and to the dance recitals, and that really helped build our relationship. We've had a couple of other people who have commented on the idea of a paid staff person. Anita says she's a faith community nurse, and that she finds in her ministry that she really, does work with the seniors a lot, and she encourages that. And whether she says she is not paid, so having somebody who is responsible for it, whether they're in a position like hers where they are a faith community nurse, is paying attention to the senior ministry and what's going on there. And also Cynthia says, I'm a parish nurse, also working part-time paid to work with many of these areas and develop the faith community nurse concept as a district parish nurse representative. Lynn asks, what's a DCE? Director of Christian Education. And then Shirley asks whether in your congregation you have transportation services available. She asked about that and also about computer or communication help.
That is one area that I wish we could have done better when I was leading it. There are people that need a ride, and there's services that the county provides for some of that. But what we've done is we've had volunteers from time to time help bring people to Bible classes and church and things like that. Just volunteer to go pick them up. I wish there was a better way of doing it. But we weren't able to find anything different than that. By having individuals go and pick other people up, there, once again, you have the fellowship opportunity, the people picking them up and speaking to them and taking them around. So that's the way we handled that. Well, I think what we're going to get into now is to give you an idea of how we started ours and give you some hints on that you may use on how to get started in either enhancing what you already have, or if you don't have anything right now, how to start from the groundwork up. So, Pastor.
So to start, pray and keep on praying. That may seem obvious, and it probably is obvious, but it's really important that we continue to pray and ask God to bless us, ask God to guide us, ask for God's Spirit to move us in the direction that we need to, and then to keep that up. This is a spiritual enterprise, and it's really important that we bathe that spiritual enterprise with prayer. I already touched on this a little bit before, but find a few like-minded people. It's very likely as you have conversation with others that this topic comes up. And so take note of that and find some other people that also have a passion for ministering for and with older adults. And then you've got a group of people to develop ideas and to move forward.
Another thing that's important, and I can't stress it enough, is to make sure that your pastor is on board with whatever you start to do. He needs to be on board from the start, and he needs to support you as you go on. In most of our churches, the pastor, is inundated with a lot of different things that he has to do. And often the biggest hurdle to overcome is giving him another ministry that he feels that he has to be responsible for. Older adults can take care of older adult ministry if they have a good leader. It doesn't have to be the pastor, but the pastor needs to say, yeah, we're going after this. We really support this. We want to use our older adults as assets, like Pastor said, and not problems. So also, like Pastor said, take that group of people and talk to your pastor and say, we want to start this. We have a way of that we think we can go about that. We don't want to put another burden on you. And perhaps this might be something that'll take some of the burdens off as well.
Next step would be to plan one enhancement and execute your plan. And I want to emphasize that it says one enhancement, not two, not 10, not a full-blown 12-month program, but start with one thing and have success with that one event or one part of ministering for and with older adults. And then once that happens, then you can expand from there.
At our church, what we did was we started with a pretty well-established 50-plus group that met on Wednesdays. It started in, I don't know the numbers. Numbers aren't all that important, but it gives you a gauge and to see if you're how you're progressing. It started probably with 35 people or something that were regularly come to the Bible classes. At the height before COVID, we had 65 coming. So what we started with was that group of people that got together, and then we expanded things. We expanded with the fellowship things that we did. We would have Oktoberfest periodically. We would have chili suppers periodically. We would have Christmas dinners periodically. And I think it's in the Luther's works somewhere. It says that if you feed them, they will come. And so food is a really important part of the fellowship. And so keep that in mind. But build gradually. From there, you can go on to having these monthly senior series talks and go on from there. So it all expands. Do one thing well, get people excited about it, and then they'll go on to doing other things. And it's okay if they have something special they want to do. Maybe they are involved in gathering clothing for an organization in your community, and they want to do that. That's great. Help them with that. It doesn't have to be everybody, but it can be a good portion of it, and that can help your church as well.
It's also important to assess. So to ask your older adults, what would they like to see? What would be helpful to them? How might be ways that they would be willing to be involved? So that can be a survey. It can just be conversations you have with people, but to solicit their ideas and input as you go along.
It's also important to take advantage, like we said earlier, of the resources that you have available to you. For the leader of your senior ministry or older adult ministry, have a good idea of where you can go for your different things. Your own congregation is a huge part that has experts. Know what your county is doing in the way of services towards older adults and see how you can get people more knowledgeable about those services as well. And then your community as a whole has a lot of other different resources to go to. And in a minute, we'll talk about specific resources that we have for you. So.
As I mentioned a few minutes ago, this is a spiritual enterprise, so I want to emphasize again to keep on praying, to keep on seeking God's guidance as you go along. It's very likely that the idea you have in your head and how it turns out are not going to be exactly the same, and that's okay. But to continue to seek God's guidance and direction as you move forward.
We have a list here of a number of resources that you can go to. You can email me and I'd be happy to respond to you. That's the first one up there, tom@tlcms.org. Pastor Mark said that he would be happy to do the same thing. If you have questions for him, he would be able to respond. You'll see the next one is tlcms.org. What we have at our church on our webpage, that's our webpage, we have a special page from our site that talks about senior ministry. If you go to that, then you go over to family ministry, I think it is, and then you scroll down to senior ministry. You'll see on there the list of everything that we're doing. You'll see some examples of poetry and things and prose from our older adults. You'll see the latest newsletter. You'll see all sorts of things. And I think maybe you can get some hints as to some of the things that we've been doing there. Another good source is the Kansas district. In Kansas, we have, I think like I said earlier, we have a standing committee that deals with older adults. And if you go to that website, kslcms.org, and you go over to caring ministry and go down to older adults, you'll find all the different newsletters that have been written by the district. And in those newsletters, you have articles from people from Synod, people from the district, people like Rich Bimler, a lot of different articles there. We also have a section of that which we talk about how to get started in different programs that might be you might be able to use in your congregation, as well as a number of things. It's just might be of interest to you. And then, of course, there's the ALOA website, aloaserves.org. Take a look at that. You must be familiar with it if you're here today, but ALOA has so many programs and is an organization that really wants to help congregations with their toolkit and with a host of many other things like this website and trips and all sorts of things like that.
Any additional questions?
Yes, Amanda asked, can you speak to the use of the terminology older adult ministry versus senior adult ministry?
Tom, I think that's your question.
Yeah, well, there's so many different terms that are thrown around, and the owls I thought was a really good one too. They all mean the same thing. When I started this, we always called our group here senior ministers or senior ministry. And we called our people not older adults, but seniors. And I, thinking that I was being in tune with what's going on across the country, I decided we're just going to change that. So I changed it and found out soon that no, they didn't like that. We're calling ours seniors. So it really doesn't matter what you call us. That the idea is the same, whether you call us older adults, if you call them seniors, if you call them owls, it doesn't really matter. It's people that are near retirement age and over that are part of the church and want to stay part of the church and part of God's family. So. Okay.
Donna asks, how have you considered developing a caring for the caregiver ministry to support the seniors that are also caregiving?
I haven't, have you?
No, it's probably not a bad idea, though.
That's probably a good idea. Thank you for that, Donna.
I will thank you, Tom and Pastor Mark, for all of the information that you have shared with us today. It's really been helpful. So thank you so much for all of your wisdom and knowledge that you have shared with us today.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for having us, and we just hope that this can be helpful.
Indeed.